Tyranny always comes in the name of compassion and equality of outcomes. When I was at Columbia, they are brainwashing my classmates saying education should be free. Healthcare is a human right. How unfair is it that there are billionaires and there are homeless people? It should be we are all equal. This same idea began the living hell of North Korea. When Kim Il-sung came to my grandmother's and my grandfather, he said this two exact thing to us. How unfair is that they are landowners, they are capitalists. And how unfair is that your children cannot be educated, you need to pay for it. If you give me the power, Kim Il-sung said, I'm going to make everything free. Government was gonna provide everything for us. If we just gave up our private property, our freedom of speech, our freedom of movement.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
Was first made a few years ago. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar tried to knock it down by calling it absurd. Then when the media turned up a wedding certificate, Omar went silent, refusing to make any comments at all, saying she does not talk about her family or personal life. Well, now others are talking, like Abdulhakim Osman, a prominent member of the Minneapolis Somali community, who is now on the record telling the Daily Mail that in 2009, Ilhan Omar married her biological brother, Ahmed Saeed Almi, so that he could legally remain in the U.S. and attend college. At the time, Omar was married to Ahmed Hersey, but it was a religious marriage, meaning there was no Minnesota state record stating that she and Hersey were husband and wife, and so marrying her brother would allow her sibling to get his legal immigration documents. But Mr. Osman isn't just saying that Omar married her biological brother. He also gave the Daily Mail the name of the Christian minister who married them. That minister reportedly says she does not want to be involved or interviewed about Congresswoman Omar.
Ass up! Lock his ass up! You're going to jail. You're going to jail.
Criticize the government?
What? You want to die? Criticize the government? You can't even speak without a man to vouch for you. You're a woman. Get her.
Welcome to America, Salma.
Can I criticize the government?
You are free to criticize the government.
Death to America! Death to America! Intifada! Intifada! Death to America!
As long as our economy and political systems prioritize profit without considering who is profiting, who is being shut out, we will perpetuate this inequality. So we cannot stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
All right, here goes nothing. Oh! Ow! Felt good for once.
You maniac!
So shut up, bitch!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever this video finds you, welcome to Text. We're going to jump right into this because I need to make my shorts. So, as y'all know, Nick Shirley went to Congress. What's going on, News Text, Carlton Way? And boy, did it get contentious. And we're going to talk about that. So, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Let me close that out. Let's, good Lord. Goodbye, CapCut. And let's get this going.
Gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Lee, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I recognize myself for an opening statement. Today's hearing will examine the widespread and outrageous amount of fraud taking place in and around Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minnesota has lost billions of dollars in state-administered and federally funded programs due to organized fraud.
What he discovered. They're going to talk about what he discovered. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Let me get this opening statement out the way right now. Nick Shirley is doing what a lot of us who do videos like this, he's actually going a step beyond, because he's the man in the street journalist. When Trump took office and he said that he was going to open up the press to individual media outlets, be it YouTubers, TikTokers, Instagrams, etc. That's how we got California Cutie. All right, you see, you got Tim Pool sitting in the media chair. You got a lot of people sitting in that media chair when I do the Carolinas crosshairs. You got a lot of people. That press room is filled with a lot of people who are independent journalists. They're not alphabet, quote unquote, mainstream journalists. You notice Caitlin Collins has been awfully quiet the past 2 months, because you got a press secretary that'll G-check her, just like that dude that can't dress worth a damn, and she cursed him out. Yeah, they're not playing games with these people no more. Don Lemon running around here trying to be the liberal equivalent to Nick Shirley, except he's a scumbag. He's on the side of the criminals. And now he is, and I say it with quotations, potentially looking at being charged with the Klan Act. Also, there's another charge where you can't infringe on people's freedom of religion. It's a First Amendment right. I forget what it is. I think it's not the Mann Act. I forget what it is. But he's looking at, as he should be looking at, severe federal charges. He should at least spend a year in jail and a $500,000 fine at the outmost. But, you know, y'all know how I feel about Pam Bondi's DOJ. You know, she gonna soccer mom, finger wag somebody and get on Fox News and talk tough. But, you know, 1,001 investigations, 0 arrests. So we'll see. But yeah, so these citizen journalists, Nick Shirley, I tip my hat to him. There are other citizen journalists that are out here who are they're center. Be they center right. You have a lot of center right. In other words, they care about their country, but they're not extremists. I appreciate Bill Maher is center left. He may be a liberal, but he's not psychotic. He doesn't believe in children mutilating themselves. He's pointing out the hypocrisy, although he's a liberal, you know, and, you know, personally, it's like, how do you stand for a liberal when you, as a black person, you should be a policy, not party. But, you know, it is what it is. But I want to tip my hat to the man for actually doing something that the FBI should have been doing from jump. But thank goodness Scott Bessent set up here. Y'all remember, I think it was Saturday, I did the show where Scott Bessent was saying that they have a special prosecutor and whatnot, and they're going to be auditing all 50 states that receive federal funds to find out what's going on with the money, be they Democrat or Republican. And if one red cent comes up missing, you better tell us where it went, or you're going to be looking at federal prison. Let's go.
Fraud networks operating in Minnesota dating back more than a decade have submitted
Face
over
that.
$9
Thank
billion.
you, Thank you.
That's $1 billion with B in false claims. Some high-profile cases in Minnesota include organizations and programs such as Feeding Our Future, Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention, Housing Stabilization Services, and Integrated Community Supports. Now we're going to watch a video.
It's welfare fraud. It's all about the daycare.
They estimate as much as $100 million a year is being stolen by shady daycare center operators.
So how much money are we talking about stolen from the American taxpayer?
Well in excess of $1 billion.
Ripping off state-run programs intended to feed low-income kids, house the disabled, and provide services to autistic children.
Where are the children at? Do you know where the children are at? Where are the children at in these daycare centers?
I don't care.
Are there children here today?
No.
No children.
Yes.
So this is Quality Learning Center. Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going.
Attorney General Keith Ellison was focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was keeping these folks in business.
When do you think Governor Walz knew about this fraud?
From the very beginning.
What happened here in
The state of Minnesota looked the other way.
Fraud within these programs have involved false claims, fictitious providers, and services not rendered, highlighting the need for stronger verification, monitoring, and enforcement to protect taxpayer funds. These fraudulent actions have robbed taxpayer funds intended to feed children, support individuals with autism, provide housing for low-income and disabled Americans, and deliver health care to Medicaid recipients. Since 2021, the DOJ has charged 98 defendants in Minnesota-based fraud cases, 85 of whom are of Somali descent. Of the 98 defendants, 64 have been convicted. DOJ has now undertaken extensive investigative action, which includes issuing over 1,750 subpoenas, executing more than 130 search warrants, and conducting more than 1,000 witness interviews. Since the start of the Trump administration, the federal response to fraud in Minnesota has intensified following a series of high-profile cases involving state-administered, federally funded programs. One of the initial instances of high-profile fraud in the state involved the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, which was at the center of a $250 million COVID-19 related fraud scheme. As part of the scheme, fraudsters exploited Department of Agriculture, USDA food programs designed to provide meals for children. Federal prosecutors ultimately convicted 57 defendants and described the scheme as the nation's largest COVID-era fraud. The issue gained renewed national attention in late December 2025 following a widely shared YouTube video posted by one of our witnesses, Mr. Nick Shirley. Mr. Shirley's work highlighted suspected fraud in Minnesota child care programs.
Hold on. I'll say again. The people in Minnesota who were convicted of fraud, they were part of a separate group of Somalians. They were part of the new Somalian regime, because there's a war within the Somalian faction. You've got old Somalians and new Somalians who want to try to build up the country or whatnot. That's why Israel recognizes the new Somalians. But the new Somalians, I mean, they were just as fraudulent as the old ones, but they were, you know, that whole helping hand is a helping hand, clean or dirty. But no, bro, you're not about to use my tax to do that. All right, because they're trying to at least establish a form of government in Somalia. This is why, remember, there was a Somalian that was running for mayor in St. Paul, but he lost. He lost to Jacob Fry because Jacob Fry's wife is associated with the old Somalians. They're thieves. They are thieves. They've been stealing money too. This is why Jacob Fry talks the way he talks. This is why he's in on the scam. So his ass is going to jail too. Him and his wife, they're not free. But what happened was those new Somalians, these are the people that the state prosecuted.
Programs. His reporting prompted federal authorities to intensify investigations, expand oversight, and coordinate multi-agency enforcement efforts. A week ago today, Mr. Shirley released a second video that documented alleged fraud in the transportation industry intended to provide rides for children, the disabled, and the elderly. Shirley uncovered companies with questionable addresses and vehicles intended to transport children, the disabled, and the elderly that remained idle for extended periods of time. We look forward to hearing from Mr. Shirley about what he was able to uncover. But how did we get here? Hopefully another witness, Scott Dexter, a former fraud investigator for the Minnesota Department of Human Services, can shed some light on that for us. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this massive wave of fraudulent activity didn't just have the consequence of ripping off taxpayers. It has drastically impacted legitimate organizations that are truly helping their neighbors. Jennifer Larson is here today to share her story about how this massive fraud has crippled her organization that serves autistic children. We'd like to think that these fraudsters will one day face justice, but it appears that is not always the case. For example, Yasmin Ali, a daycare and home healthcare owner charged with stealing millions from Minnesota taxpayers, after being granted bail, disappeared before a trial and has not been located since. That was more than a decade ago. The tentacles of this fraud ring are widespread and include crimes other than fraud. For example, the aforementioned Yasmin Ali. Her brother, Adaris Abdullah Ali, pleaded guilty in 2009 to lying to a federal grand jury about his knowledge of a group of young Somali men in Minneapolis who traveled to Somalia to fight with Al-Shabaab, a foreign terrorist organization against the transitional federal government of Somalia. We can also consider the fact that at least $700 million in U.S. cash transported via passenger luggage through Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The incidents are all currently under federal investigation, with the majority carried by couriers traveling to Somalia, other African nations, and the Middle East. While no definitive links to funding terrorism have been established yet, we know that hundreds of millions of dollars in cash are being transported to areas where foreign terrorist organizations are active. What could possibly go wrong? A whistleblower has alleged that TSA personnel at MSP, Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, repeatedly identified and flagged routine encounters with Somali men carrying large suitcases filled with bundled cash, often exceeding $1 million. During an interview, a former TSA agent at MSP from 2016 to 2021, now a whistleblower, Liz Jackson, noted that she saw, quote, suitcases packed with millions of dollars in cash moving through MSP again and again, carried by the same type of couriers, which raised questions that she feels law enforcement and political leaders still haven't answered, close quote. Jackson further explained her repeated encounters with Somali men carrying suitcases packed with cash, and in one case, a bag filled with new passports. According to Jackson, the volume, consistency, and profile of the transactions she witnessed were well beyond ordinary or everyday behavior. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has noted that the department is currently investigating where Minnesota's taxpayer dollars are being placed. Additional reports show that Somali individuals in the United States send roughly $215 million abroad each year. On January 9th, Secretary Bessent indicated that the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, informed 4 money transfer organizations that they're under investigation for their roles in the fraud scheme involving the theft of funds from social services in Minnesota. He also indicated that some banks in Minnesota are being investigated by the Internal Revenue Service's Civil Enforcement Division for allegations related to money laundering. As you can see, there's much to unpack surrounding these numerous fraud schemes taking place in and around Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah, because the FBI, Cash Patel, they're on the ground now in Minnesota. I mean, I'm shrugging my shoulders. I'm like, call me when perp walks are being broadcasted. Because, just because you got ICE agents there and you're threatening to investigate somebody and the FBI's on the ground, talking Waltz and Ilhan and Fry and the Attorney General and other members of that Minnesota legislative branch. Yeah, call me when they start getting marched out in handcuffs.
I would be remiss if I didn't suggest and urge additional investigation throughout this entire country. I know that in my home state of Arizona, our Democrat Attorney General came in to office and quickly said that there had been $2.5 million in fraud just in the Medicaid program alone. And in recent studies released over the last year in Arizona, it's been suggested that as much as $7.2 billion in fraud annually take place in Arizona's similar programs. So this is not just a Minnesota issue, but it just happens to be at the forefront of why we're here today. I look forward to today's hearing, and I thank the members and witnesses for taking part back and recognize the ranking member, Ms. McBath, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for convening this hearing this morning to talk about the harm that fraud can cause. And thank you for everyone that is here this morning to testify. It's so necessary that we continue to investigate and prosecute all forms of fraud, including government fraud. which can turn many into victims. That is because a person committing fraud against a government program steals from all of us as taxpayers and abuses the initial purpose of these programs. They harm the organizations that need these programs to operate, and most importantly, they harm the people that the program is designed to help. Whether we're talking about a program that feeds school children, helps seniors find housing, helps people overcome addiction, or provide services to address disabilities, it is critical that the dollars that we invest in these programs actually serve the purposes that we have in mind when we created them. That's why the Department of Justice has always combated fraud, including prosecuting dozens of people for perpetrating fraudulent schemes in Minnesota in 2021 and under the Biden administration. But prosecutions are not enough to combat or prevent fraud. So the Biden administration also established a COVID-19 enforcement task force and increased oversight of programs that were being targeted by fraudsters. Minnesota lawmakers have also taken steps to reduce fraud in their state, strengthening the state's ability to stop potential fraud sooner and improving investigations to hold those scammers accountable. But President Trump has taken a very different approach to fraud. Just last week, Trump added quite a few fraudsters to his growing list of people that he has pardoned, not because they are deserving a second chance, but because they hired his friends, back-channeled a donation, or served his political purposes. He has pardoned many people charged or convicted of fraud and other financial crimes, wiping away more than $1 billion in money that would otherwise have gone to victims of crime. President Trump has also fired inspectors general, instructed his DOJ to stop enforcing bribery statutes, and gutted the offices that investigate white-collar crime. That is how we know this hearing is not really about fraud.
You see what this is? I mean, because I'm gonna explain it to you right now, because I've seen actually have before I found the Nick Shirley video. It was excerpts. Let me explain to you how black people argue. And this is exactly how Jasmine Crockett argues. And it's a typical black female arguing tactic that they got from white people, liberals. They play the whataboutism game. Well, what about this? What about that? As if that's supposed to substantiate something. Let me tell you something. Corruption is corruption. If you don't handle it when it happens, don't try to lean back on it. Lean back into the past. Don't do the reach back on crimes that when you were in power, or better yet, now that you're out of power, and the mitigating circumstances shows that you tried to railroad somebody, like the whole Tom Homan $50,000 thing. They never said that he took the money. They just said that the money disappeared, that he was bribed by an undercover FBI agent, $50,000. Tom Homan never took the money, but somehow the money disappeared. So then who took the money? You understand what I'm saying? I remember a job I had back in Ohio, working in banquets, whatnot. I called myself trying to report one of my coworkers, and the manager, typical black Negro, single mama raised in the ghetto, wanted to play the whataboutism game. What about when you did this? What about when you did that? I'm like, what about it? If you didn't say nothing about it then, don't say nothing about it now. I'm bringing something current to you to go. Don't bring it up now. Why didn't you handle it months ago when it happened? But you know, they do that. Understand, black and white liberals and their black slaves, they do that to avoid handling responsibility, to skirt and escape dealing with accountability. I don't want to hear it. If you felt that Trump did something inappropriate, why didn't you deal with it when it happened? Why didn't you say something back when it happened? You wait until now when his DOJ is persecuting one of your criminal POSs to now talk about something that happened last year? I mean, the whole Epstein case blew up in your face to where now you have the Clintons, Hillary and Bill, now they're found in contempt of Congress for not appearing concerning the Epstein files. Are you gonna play the whatism game about that? Oh, we're gonna cover that. But I'm just saying.
It is about trust. The Trump administration does not want you to trust these programs because if you don't trust them, they're easier to destroy them. They do not want you to trust entire communities because if you don't trust them, they're easier to intimidate. We cannot let that happen.
Why would we trust
We will
Cameron?
continue to fight for robust and responsible oversight and for the continuation of initiatives that make all of our communities safer,
No, you won't.
healthier, and more
No,
resilient.
you won't.
Across the country, there are daycares, schools, hospitals, treatment centers, research facilities,
What about
nursing homes,
What about them?
fire departments,
What about-
police departments,
What about
airports, and more that all depend on state or federal funding. Not just to help those in need, but to serve every single one of us.
What about them?
President Trump succeeds in an attempt to freeze child care funding across 5 states, which is temporarily blocked by a court order. The effects would ripple across families and businesses throughout our economy.
And you know why that is. You got Oregon, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, and now Minnesota. Those are the 5 states. Sanctuary. Portland talking about she's not going to investigate the Somalian fraud going on in her city. February 1st, Trump is cutting the money off. Doesn't matter what the court says. He's cutting the money off. And I'll say it again. The best way for the federal government to make sure that businesses are legit is to not give the money to the states. If you need the money, you come straight to us. You come straight to the federal government, and we'll verify your paperwork. We'll make sure that you're legitimate or not the state. We'll do it. And if you're not, then you get nothing. In fact, we'll probably be trying to run a scam. If we find out that your paperwork is fraudulent, not that you don't qualify, it's just that it's fraudulent. We'll come get you for that. That's the new deal.
It would affect more than 500,000 children. And these are children that are not just within the state of Minnesota, but 500,000 children, their parents, the businesses and organizations where those parents work, and the many people who depend on those businesses to fulfill needs in those communities. That's the fallout from just one program, addressing one need across only 5 states. If President Trump continues this assault on critical programs, the harms could be far greater. These latest attacks come on top of the cuts that President Trump and congressional Republicans already forced through, which are taking health care from 10 million Americans and reducing food assistance to over 40 million Americans, including many, many children. We don't have to choose between programs that are susceptible to fraud and nothing at all. With proper oversight, we can make sure that every American is fed, that everyone can access housing and medical treatment, and that our daycares and our schools can keep guiding our children towards a better future. I look forward to hearing more today about how we can achieve this goal. I thank our witnesses for being here, and I yield.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan. No, I don't recognize him right now. but I will recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us. In a just world, the Judiciary Committee today will be investigating why a masked ICE agent shot 3 times in cold blood and killed an unarmed citizen, a 37-year-old mom, Renee Nicole Good.
Let me see if
we'll be investigating why Trump's DOJ is harassing and investigating Renee's wife instead of investigating her killer.
There we go.
We'd be asking why ICE agents are trained in basic CPR, but 911 tapes have shown none of the agents performing CPR on Ms. Good. They left her bleeding alone in her car for almost 3 minutes and definitively rejected the help of a man who came forward and identified himself as a doctor. We'd be investigating why in another Minnesota case, ICE agents deployed tear gas under the car of a family of 8 people, including a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, and 2 kids with severe asthma who were just...
Do you know why that happened? The family was trying, the black family that wound up getting their car. Hold on, because this is a serious matter. Hold on. The reason why that happened was because the black father was trying to get his family out of the neighborhood because these paid agitators were causing all sorts of chaos on his street, and he wanted to get his family out of there before anything crazy happened. And he wound up getting caught up in the swarm. So unfortunately, his family wound up being victims of circumstance because of the paid agitators. Had they not been there, the paid agitators, that guy wouldn't have had no reason to leave his house with his family. And none of this would have happened. But I digress.
Trying to get home from a basketball game. The baby stopped breathing, and his mom had to administer CPR as they desperately waited for medical help to arrive. But our colleagues want to talk about fraud in Minnesota. Fraud that was already being investigated and prosecuted under the last administration. It is true that social services fraud, serious fraud, occurred in Minnesota. That's why under President Biden, the Department of Justice opened multiple criminal investigations that to date have already resulted in more than 90 people being charged and 64 people being convicted of federal criminal offenses. Indeed, Minnesota lawmakers acted to root out and prevent fraud going forward in the public benefits program.
And of course, look who's in the background.
That's why last year, the Minnesota legislature passed legislation to empower the governor to cut off payments or to claw back funds whenever fraud is detected. And that's why Governor Walz appointed the first ever director of program integrity to make sure the state is effectively investigating and preventing fraud and corruption in their programs. The fraud in Minnesota was discovered not by a right-wing social media influencer who's been harassing people in communities all over Minnesota in recent weeks, but by the hard work of real local investigative journalists, brave whistleblowers, and state and federal auditors.
Can he name a journalist? Name one journalist that exposed the fraud.
It is this fraud, which we must take seriously, is not unlike the 2.5.
CNN called a whole bunch of those daycares that was on Nick Shirley's list. Only one answered the phone and said, no, we're not a fraud. And that was enough for CNN. I think it was like 49 of them. Only one answered the phone. And for CNN, that was enough.
$5 billion breathtaking Medicare fraud scheme uncovered last year in the home state of the chairman of this subcommittee, as he himself mentioned, or the massive COVID-19 unemployment assistance fraud scheme uncovered in Chairman Jordan's home state of Ohio. Fraud is endemic in government all over the world. There are fraudsters attacking our public institutions, trying to undermine them and rip them off.
Yeah, bro, it's 2026. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it.
Even our president has been convicted of 34 counts.
Oh
of
boy, here we
fraud.
go. Those 34 counts, as far as the financial penalty, have been overturned. The $450 million, it was overturned by the appellate court because there was no injured party. Now Trump legal team is working on the conviction series, because again, how can you convict somebody for fraud when there was no fraud unless you were railroaded? This is why the whole Letitia James situation is going through. She is actually guilty of what she accused Trump of doing. He bought a property, said it's worth this much money. The bank evaluated, said no, it's worth this much money. He said, okay, fine. It's sold for that much money. The bank was made whole. Trump got his money. Where's the fraud?
By a jury of his peers in New York, related to the fraudulent payments made to porn star Stormy Daniels, and also civilly convicted in New York for different kinds of real estate fraud. Fraud is not headquartered in one state or one municipality, much less one ethnic, racial, or religious community. But President Trump couldn't resist the temptation to use fraud in Minnesota as an occasion to mobilize.
You notice he used race as if this has anything to do about race. This is not a racial situation, although Somalians are the main culprits, but it's not a racial situation.
The power of the federal government to bully and intimidate first and second generation Somali Americans who live in that state. Many of the people convicted in the fraud schemes were of Somali ancestry. So, under the pretext of cracking down on a fraud that had already been discovered, investigated, and prosecuted, Trump surged federal immigration officers to Minnesota and aimed them at the Somali American communities.
He said that like that's enough. Bro, no, it's not enough. There's more fraud going on.
Calling the people who live there repeatedly garbage. This is despite the fact that it is a complete non sequitur, obviously, to send immigration agents to conduct fraud investigations and the deployment of law enforcement resources.
See how we lie? ICE is not there for fraud investigations. ICE is there for people whose TPSs are up, those who are in the country illegally, and those who have deportation orders. That's what they're there for. Now, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI is a different story. But, you know, he's a liberal, so he's going to lie.
Against an entire ethnic community after the criminal prosecution of a small group of its members is to promote the sinister ideas of collective guilt and guilt by association, two doctrines that are emphatically rejected in Anglo-American jurisprudence and by our courts. The community targeted in Minneapolis is made up, incidentally, overwhelmingly of U.S. citizens. 95% of Somalis in Minnesota are U.S. citizens, including 58% of whom were born in the United States. Well, what is the Trump administration's actual record on fraud? Well, let's see. President Trump pardoned the big-time drug dealer and convicted fraudster Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, sparing him a 45-year criminal sentence after he brought in 400 tons of cocaine into our country. That's 800,000 pounds of cocaine that he said, quote, we are going to stuff up the nostrils of the gringos. And Trump pardoned him. And if you're interested in that particular sweetheart deal, that would be a great subject for a hearing, Mr. Chairman. Just last week, again, the president granted pardons to more convicted fraudsters. Julio Herrera Vellatini was scheduled to be sentenced this month for participation in a political corruption and fraud scheme, alongside his co-defendant, the former governor of Puerto Rico, Wanda.
Understand, this is the Jasmine Crockett whataboutism defense, as if this actually holds any weight.
Vasquez. In late 2024, Mr. Herrera was facing felony bribery charges. In a different case, his daughter donated $2.5 million to the MAGA Inc. Super PAC. Then in May 2025, Mr. Herrera's lawyer, who had served on President Trump's legal team, negotiated a deal allowing him to plead guilty to a trivial misdemeanor offense instead. Several months later, Mr. Herrera's daughter donated another $1 million to MAGA Inc. And what do you know? President Trump generously granted Mr. Herrera a full and unconditional pardon just last week. They're making a fraud out of the pardon process in America with...
First and foremost, Todd and Julie Christie, they conspired to defraud $36 million from banks. They didn't get that money. They didn't get that money. Paul Walskak stole more than $10 million from employees. Trump wiped out $4.4 million he owed. What he's talking about is people who lost their pensions. Ross Ulbricht ran an illegal online drug marketplace and used fake IDs. Trump relieved him of nearly $184 million that he owed to the Biden administration, because at the time it was the online drug marketplace that he was doing was that whole puberty blocker crap. Under the Biden administration, because they forced him to do that. Adriana and Andres Camberos committed bank and mail fraud. Trump eliminated roughly $49 million owed by each sibling. I'm not familiar with that case. But a lot of these frauds were what you call frauds were pushed by the Biden administration, because these people were the Biden administration were getting kickbacks, just like with Sunny Holston and her husband committing insurance fraud, trying to bilk the insurance companies for millions upon tens of millions of dollars with fake injury claims. Yeah, because your Biden administration was allowing that. Now, am I saying that these people are innocent? No, I'm just explaining why they did it. Now, if Trump wants to sign them a pardon, it's funny how nobody had any problem with the pardons that Biden signed, especially for his son of all people. But you know how they say, rules for thee, but not for me.
Pay-to-play rules as they pardon recidivist, hardened, unrepentant fraudsters. Well, indeed, in total, President Trump has pardoned more than 1,600 people, depriving victims, survivors, and taxpayers of an estimated, check this out, $1.55 billion in restitution and fines owed to us, the American people, while shockingly, because other presidents didn't do this, but Trump did, while shockingly allowing corporate fraudsters and tax cheats to keep all of their ill-gotten gains. This is a massive and unprecedented swindle from working-class people and crime victims, as the administration gives all of these ill-gotten gains right back to the criminal fraudsters who stole the money in the first place.
But again, what you're trying to say is if you allow this, then you should allow the Somalian fraud. That's the, in all honesty, that's the bottom line of the argument.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, President Trump has dismantled the infrastructure that actually prosecutes white-collar crime and fraud in America, actually roots out waste, fraud, and abuse. The Trump DOJ gutted the public integrity section at DOJ that prosecutes government officials who break the law. And nearly a year ago, his DOJ suspended enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which prohibits foreign bribery, saying all bets are off. He's gutted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is the first and the only agency devoted solely at the federal level to protect American consumers against being cheated by big financial corporations. The CFPB delivered $21 billion back to more than 200 million Americans.
You can hold up a sign talking crap about individuals, but show us the proof. Don't just say it, show us the proof.
Who were victims of fraud and other predatory business practices, and the administration has been gutting the CFPB because they are on the side of corporate fraud and white-collar crime. That's the truth of what's going on there. They fired 17 inspectors general, the independent government watchdogs, whose job it is actually to root out waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption, and left 28 IG offices without Senate-confirmed leadership at all.
Yeah, because they weren't doing their jobs. A lot of corruption was going on under the Biden crime family administration, and they weren't doing their goddamn jobs. Show us the proof of what you're saying. Matter of fact, I had somebody in my comment section where I post images. Hold on. Let me make sure I get this straight. Let me pause it. I had somebody commenting in my community tabs where I post my images, where I was telling them, where I posted, where those of you who've been listening to me for a while, you know that Paramount has been trying to buy CNN. They of course made their bid because they want to buy the whole Warner Brothers catalog, but Netflix has outbidded them for that catalog because they want the Batman, Superman, Scooby-Doo, etc. They want that whole catalog. Netflix does. We all know Netflix has said that they have no interest in CNN and National Geographic and all that garbage. They want no parts of that. And Paramount said to Netflix, well, hey, look, if you buy it, if you beat us out on the bid, we'll buy CNN from you. Well, CNN created a whole package of the shows that they don't want, and they're going to dump it on Disney Plus or whatnot. Whereas Paramount wants to they'll buy the whole package. Because if Paramount, which is owned by a conservative, if they own CNN, they already own CBS News. Remember, you had a reporter on there 2 weeks ago talking about, in a tearful way, talking about how they're going to be fair and balanced news. I don't know why he was crying. The same thing is going to happen to CNN. This is why they gave Anderson Cooper a brand new contract, because if Netflix winds up winning the deal and buying the Warner Brothers catalog, which it looks like is going to happen, they're going to sell CNN and a bunch of other garbage channels that they don't want, Netflix that they don't want. They're going to sell it to the highest bidder, which will turn out to be Paramount, again, owned by a conservative. So Anderson's Cooper contract will protect him if they wind up having to sell CNN, if they sell CNN to Paramount and the conservative owner decides to dump Anderson Cooper, he'll be getting a golden parachute. That's the deal. That's the whole purpose of his new contract. Do you understand? But this idiot keeps arguing with me, even though I posted the actual. Let me show you. I know. I know. I hate to derail the show with this, but I mean, this is what I kept telling this moron. I said, bro, all you got to do is just look at my post. I put the post out there. How are you not going at the post? Here it is. I'm saying, here, look. Matter of fact, here's his name, Cheese Crust 13. I posted this exactly for him. The snub, Netflix $83 billion other offer focuses on entertainment assets like HBO Max and the Warner Brothers film and TV studios. It is pointedly avoiding old-line linear cable networks, including CNN, TNT, HGTV, and the Food Network. Yeah, Netflix has no use for these crappy channels. Separation strategy. Before the Netflix merger closes, Warner Brothers Distribution plans to spin off its traditional cable assets into Discovery Global. Okay, so I got that wrong. Discovery Global, a separate publicly traded company led by Gunnar Wiedenfels. Reason for the past. The industry analysts suggest Netflix has little interest in the low margin, high regulation world of live news and wants to avoid the political scrutiny that comes with owning a major news outlet. That's what it says. I keep telling this moron, I said, dude, Cheese Crust 13. Dude, I posted the facts right there. He's trying to argue with me over shit. He's trying to argue a war of words with me. And I'm like, dude, this is a screenshot of exactly what the deal is concerning the merger. If Netflix buys it, they don't want this. They don't want CNN, TNT, and HDTV and the Food Network. But Paramount wants CNN. They really don't give a damn about TNT, HGTV, and the Food Network. They want CNN. The conservative wants CNN in order to reshape the news, CNN, because it's a dead network. Netflix wants nothing to do with it. They want the Batman, Superman, Scooby-Doo, etc. They give a shit about CNN. This idiot is arguing with me, talking about some CNN owns the Warner Brothers catalog. Like, man, shut up. Shut the fuck up. Surrounded by morons. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't mean to get off on the tangent, but oh my God. This is why I call people internet niggas. Because you're dumb as hell. You think you know what you're talking about, but really you just arguing. You're arguing for the sake of arguing, but you really don't know what the hell you're talking about. Let's get back to it.
Allowing the corruption and the fraud to run rampant. So if we're going to have a hearing about fraud in America, Mr. Chairman, let's do it. Let's take in the full scope of what's taking place in our country. I yield back to you.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the chairman of the entire committee, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I want to thank our witnesses for being here. Estimates are potentially as high as $9 billion we're looking at here in what appears to be a decade-long scam, fraud. I mean, I always look at one program I talked about a couple weeks ago in an oversight hearing was this Feeding Our Future program, where taking federal Americans' hard-earned tax dollars, taking that money and supposedly providing meals to children. Problem was there were no meals and no kids. They're just stuffing it in their pockets. So I think this is a great hearing to have. We appreciate the witnesses and the work that they've done. Ms. Larson and the work she does and actually making a difference, doing a legitimate program. Mr. Shirley for uncovering this, and Mr. Dexter and others who are here. So with that, I would yield back. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and the hearing itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recognize myself for just some UCs. The first one is President Joe Biden commutes sentences for two of Chicago area's most notorious fraudsters. North Dakota judge blasts Biden for setting fraudsters free. Biden commutes roughly 1,500 sentences, pardons 39 in biggest single day act of clemency.
Right, you want to play the shoulda, woulda, coulda game?
Illinois lawmakers furious after Biden commutes sentences of state fraudsters.
You want to play what about it?
Without objection. And now,
Mr. Chairman, could I enter some as well?
Yeah, please.
Thank you much. This UC request is from ABC News, January 20, 2026, titled Trump's Pardons Forgive Financial Crimes That Came with Hundreds of Millions of Dollars in Punishment. This one is Arizona has recovered just 5% of taxpayer dollars lost in a $2.5 billion Medicaid fraud scheme. That's ProPublica. Columbus Dispatch. Columbus mother and daughter among 15 indicted in pandemic unemployment assistance fraud scheme. And finally, a Minnesota fraud scheme timeline from NPR News. Fraud investigation stretched across Wells's tenure.
Without objection. And now, without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record, and we will introduce today's witnesses. Mr. Scott Dexter. Mr. Dexter is a former law enforcement officer, having served for 28 years. He also served with the Minnesota Department of Human Services Office of Inspector General, where he investigated fraud in the Child Care Assistance Program. Thank you, Mr. Dexter, for being here. And Ms. Jennifer Larson. Ms. Larson is the founder and chief executive officer of the Holland Center for Autism, a clinic that provides services to children and young adults with autism. She started the Holland Center to serve families like hers that were not receiving adequate services and support elsewhere. Thank you, Ms. Larson, for being here today. Mr. Nick Shirley is an independent journalist. His recent investigations and videos have shed light on the scale of fraud in public benefit programs in Minnesota that are currently ongoing. And thank you, Mr. Shirley, for being here. And Mr. Dylan Hetler-Gaudet. Mr. Hetler-Gaudet is the acting vice president of policy and government affairs at the Project on Government Oversight.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Who is this? This dude looks like a joke.
POGO is a nonprofit organization that investigates alleged wrongdoing by the governor. Thank you, Mr. Hetler-Gaudet, for being here with us today. We welcome all our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. The record will reflect that the witnesses have all answered in the affirmative. And at the instruction of Mr. Hetler-Gaudet, I wanted to let all members of the panel know that when you have a question for him, please say his name so he knows that you are addressing him, please. I want the witnesses to know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes, and we'll begin now with Mr. Dexter. You are recognized for your 5-minute statement.
Thank you. Chair, members of the community, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Scott Dexter. I'm a retired law enforcement investigator with 28 years of experience, most of it spent conducting criminal and financial fraud investigations, with experience in surveillance operations. In 2013, after retiring from law enforcement, I joined the Minnesota Department of Human Services as part of a newly created investigative unit within the Office of Inspector General. Our mission was straightforward: identify and investigate fraud within the Child Care Assistance Program, known as CCAP. I was one of the original 4 investigators hired, all of us former law enforcement professionals with backgrounds in criminal investigations. Our cases were not selected based on the name of the center, the owner, or the community it served. They were selected based solely on tips, complaints, and the amount of CCAP funding being paid out. The highest funded centers were reviewed first, and many of those centers were referred to us through the public tip line or by licensing inspectors who observed activity inconsistent with a legitimate daycare operation. What we found was deeply concerning. Many of these centers operated out of commercial spaces with windows totally covered, no visible play areas, and very few children ever present. Through surveillance, data collection, and review of attendance and billing records, we repeatedly documented patterns of overbilling, non-existent attendance, and in some cases, children being signed in for hours they were never actually at the center. Our investigative process was thorough and methodical. We collected licensing and billing data, installed covert surveillance cameras, reviewed hours of video, identified parents and employees, and calculated estimated overpayments based on actual attendance. Completed cases were then turned over to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension for search warrants, interviews, arrests, and potential prosecution. As our investigations progressed, we noticed a trend. Many of the centers receiving the highest levels of CCAP funding were owned and operated by Somali individuals, and the families served were predominantly Somali. This was not the basis for selecting cases, but it did become the basis for accusations against us. We were labeled as racially biased, despite the fact that our case selection was driven entirely by funding data. An outside review was launched into our investigative practices. We were questioned about how we selected centers and how we conducted surveillance. Following that review, new restrictions were placed on our work, including mandatory panel reviews before we could move forward with investigations. Investigators were also pulled from conducting new or current investigations in order to enter data from all previous complaints received by DHS into a newly created database, a process that took nearly a year to complete. These changes significantly hindered our ability to do our jobs effectively. Ultimately, in 2019, I chose to retire because the investigative process had become so constrained that meaningful work was no longer possible. Through collaboration with federal agencies, including the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, we learned that millions of dollars in cash from the Somali community was being flown out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport by Somali couriers. At one point, nearly $70 million had been documented leaving the country halfway through a single year. Although we could not prove that the cash was obtained fraudulently, we strongly suspected that it was. We also encountered situations where federal partners were prevented from opening cases due to concerns about political sensitivities surrounding the Somali community and the refugee resettlement program. These decisions had real consequences, allowing fraud to continue unchecked. Throughout our work, we identified several loopholes that made CCAP highly vulnerable to fraud. Centers were allowed to bill for the full authorized hours, even when children were present for only minutes. Billing records could be submitted up to 30 days later, creating opportunities for manipulation. Attendance records were handwritten, unreliable, and often incomplete. And despite our recommendations, no biometric attendance systems, no electronic submission requirements, and no state-installed security cameras were ever implemented. Chair and members, the purpose of my testimony is not to cast blame on any community. It is to highlight systemic weaknesses that allowed large-scale fraud to occur and to emphasize the need for stronger safeguards, better oversight, and investigative processes that are allowed to function without political interference. Thank you for your time and your commitment to ensuring accountability within publicly funded programs. And I am prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dexter. And now we're going to recognize Mr. Hetler-Gaudet for your 5 minutes of opening statement.
Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today on the important issues of preventing fraud and protecting taxpayer dollars. My name is Dylan Hetler-Gaudet, and I am the Acting Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs at the Project on Government Oversight. We are a nonpartisan, independent watchdog that promotes a more accountable, transparent, and effective federal government. We view it as our mission to combat abuse of power and corruption in the federal government, which includes working on rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. The unfortunate truth is that fraud in government programs is a fact of life. Since the United States government has existed, fraud in government has also existed. For much longer than that, in fact. For as long as human beings have been organizing ourselves into societies and building institutions to govern those societies, there have always been those who will seek to take advantage. This is a harsh but real truth related to the human condition, related to our fundamentally fallen and flawed natures. That said, it is still incumbent upon every one of us to do what we can to prevent fraud and to hold perpetrators of fraud accountable. This is especially true when the fraud implicates hard-earned taxpayer dollars and critical public programs and services. This is true whether we're talking about fraud in the context of the Feeding Our Future program or any other program in Minnesota, whether we're talking about welfare fraud in Mississippi, which involved the participation of a world-famous Hall of Fame NFL quarterback. This is true whether we're talking about fraud in the context of it being perpetrated by large multinational defense companies.
He was talking about Brett Favre and talking about NFL quarterbacks. And I'm going to tell you right now, the only way that Somalians are allowed to leave the Minneapolis airport with suitcases full of cash is if the governor suspends any type of investigation concerning that. And I'll say this right now. If Tim Walz
isn't prosecuted by March 1st, then you know that this is all bullshit.
In the context of multi-billion-dollar contract they have with the Defense Department. The point here is that fraud and the abuse of taxpayer dollars is not related to any particular geographic, demographic, or other boundary or characteristic. So why do these things happen so much? Mostly they are caused by deep structural flaws, gaps, and weaknesses in our system of government. They're also driven by recalcitrance and resistance to change on the part of federal agencies. To put it shortly, fraud is a systemic problem and it requires systemic solutions. So what are these solutions? I'm pleased to share a few of them with you today.
And yes, I'm having a hard time
Let's
taking
look
this
at
guy seriously.
Watchdogs, critical sources of information, and practitioners of oversight from within the federal government itself. I'm specifically talking about inspectors general.
If Trust Me Bro was a person.
The Government Accountability Office, and whistleblowers. Rather than attacking, firing, undermining, and intimidating these individuals and entities as this administration and its allies have done, we must strengthen, preserve, and protect them. We must enact reforms to make sure that IGs and GAO can perform their duties effectively and independently. And we must add additional safeguards to make sure that whistleblowers can blow the whistle without fear of reprisal or retaliation. We must also take a long, hard look at the architecture currently in place for how we track, monitor, analyze, and assess federal funding. To put it bluntly, that architecture is broken. Key resources like USAspending.gov are in desperate need of overhaul and modernization. We need to enhance and improve the quantity, quality, timeliness, and integrity of the data and information we collect on federal funding. We need to promote more accountability, transparency, and compliance mechanisms within the chain of spending for federal funding. If we don't do this, we will never have a good grasp on where funding is going, where it's ending up, who is being helped by it, who is being missed by it, and what the ultimate impact is. Lastly, we must enact robust reforms and vigorous enforcement to crack down on corruption, cronyism, and conflicts of interest, which turbocharge waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. The presidential pardon is an acute example of this, with each of the last two administrations using the pardon power inappropriately to pardon convicted fraudsters. We must also promote reforms to crack down on the revolving door between agencies and industries, and to head off pay-to-play politics, all of which distort and corrupt decisions like the award of federal contracts. The takeaway here is simple. Focusing on individuals' salacious, scandalous examples of fraud is akin to looking at the symptoms and not looking at the disease or the root causes of the disease. The Project on Government Oversight stands ready, willing, and able to work with anyone here who wants to work on root causes and systemic solutions so that we can actually get our hands around waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption in the federal government. Thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hedlegata. And I forgot to mention, when you get about 10 seconds left, I'll just tip that so everybody will know that as well. So, Mr. Shirley, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Awesome. I'm here today to speak on behalf of all hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens here inside of the United States. I've helped bring to light widespread fraud that's happening inside our nation, and we the people have had enough of our hard-earned money going towards fraudsters as if it's no big deal. As I speak here, I want to ask everyone a question. How much do we trust when we pay our taxes it's going to benefit our nation? People erupted during the Boston Tea Party over just a few percentages as they believe they were being taxed without representation. Nowadays, we have the representation, but do we trust our representatives? My name is Nick Shirley, and I made a 41-minute video that I posted on platforms like X and YouTube. My video received over 100 million views, and it created instant change within our government. As the federal government launched investigations in departments such as Health and Human Services, rose over $185 million in childcare funding until businesses can prove they are legitimate businesses. I actually became aware of the fraud that was happening in Minnesota in June of 2025, as I was there for a separate video in Minnesota and started reaching out to me, asking me if I was making a video on the fraud. I said, well, what fraud? And this lady, she was a real estate agent, and she says, well, I'm having a hard time selling my properties because people are curious about these assisted livings that are popping up next door to some of the houses that we're buying, or the home health care clinics that are popping up, and we don't know who's next to these houses that we're trying to sell. And I said, well, I'm not going to come and make a video if I don't have any proof. So therefore, I left Minnesota, and I continued to look for fraud as in the best way I could.
Again, contacted by a American Minnesotan.
And as I was getting my own information, a man by the name of David reached out to me, and he said, hey, I have been investigating this fraud for years now. I have been driving by these childcare centers. I've never seen a single child, and I have received information from the state of Minnesota as to how much money these places are receiving. I said, great, let me come to Minnesota and we'll make this video about potential fraud that was taking place inside of Minnesota. We go to a daycare, and I'm instantly surprised by what we see. We arrived, and it was an industrialized building, and there was 2 daycares registered at that daycare, at that building. And the first thing I noticed is all the windows are blacked out, and there's no footprints in the snow of any children. There's no playgrounds or anything that would make it look like it's a child care. But above me, a sign read, open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. But there was nobody there. The doorbell did not even work. And then we continued to go to other daycares, and we noticed the same pattern. No children, blacked out windows, and one daycare, a learning center, spelled Quality Learning Center instead of Quality Learning Center. They had received $1.9 million, yet with that $1.9 million, they could not even spell Leering right on their sign. Governor Walz has said he's been fighting fraud in Minnesota since 2019 and said the buck stops with him. However, how long would it take for you to notice $1 million leaving your bank account and not knowing where it's going? That's essentially what had been happening in Minnesota for years, as billions of dollars have been misplaced. And meanwhile, while people like Governor Tim Walz call people like me a white supremacist, delusional conspiracy theorist, he actually decided to drop out of re-election because I believe of how deep and extensive this fraud is. Thank you very much. Since my reporting, the HHS department froze over $185 million, and to this day, not a single business has been able to prove proof of legitimacy. How fast would you be proving that you are a legitimate business if you have children to actually feed and to take care of? You'd be sending in that paperwork instantly. I made this video to document the widespread fraud that has been taking place, as I truly believe all fraud is bad. And people like me, my generation, we're sick of seeing tax dollars go towards fraud. We just want to have the same opportunities that our fathers and our grandparents had. And when you see people making millions of dollars by committing fraud, it upsets everybody from all age demographics. And so I hope today we can have a good conversation, and I think we can all agree that fraud is bad and that fraud is fraud. And I wish the best for our country, and I think that's what needs to be happening, is to crack down on all forms of fraud. So thank you for having me, and God bless the USA.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. And now I recognize Ms. Larson for your 5-minute opening statement.
Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak today on this issue. My name is Jennifer Larson. I'm the founder and CEO of Holland Center in Minnesota. I've been an autism provider for over 20 years and started the organization for my son. I built Holland Center because families with children like mine were desperate for help, desperate for services and stability, desperate for somewhere they could trust their child would be supported and helped, not sent home on a bad day, not babysat in a classroom and forgotten. We serve the children that don't succeed in public school settings. What started as a small program grew over 2 decades into 4 locations that families rely on, not just for therapy, but for hope, routine, and survival. This work is a labor of love for me. Just like me, there are providers all over the state laboring with love to help these children. And this week, Holland and other programs all over Minnesota are collapsing. Not because we committed fraud, but because a crime ring was allowed to operate inside Minnesota's service system, and the government's clumsy response is now destroying legitimate, long-standing providers and devastating families that we serve. Families come to Holland, they do not have a backstop. Their children often receive 30 or more hours of therapy a week. These are not an extravagance, these are medically necessary. These children learn to communicate, regulate their emotions, reduce dangerous behaviors, and function in daily life. For many parents, therapy determines if they can work. Consistent staff and therapy prevents severe behaviors and regression. Structured care keeps children and their siblings safe. When services disappear, families do not just simply adjust, they face a crisis. For more than 2 decades, Holland has served hundreds of children year after year, employed hundreds of clinicians and staff, operated under yearly on-site audits, inspections, and
Yes, she's defending the fraud because she's a liberal. And this is the funny thing about it. They defend criminality. This is why nobody gives a shit what liberals have to say.
documentation oversight, delivered real services to real children every day. We have always complied with everything the system required. Yet, within the last month, the state has withheld over $400,000 in Medicaid funds for my own program, and that number grows every single day. I had to infuse my personal funds to survive these weeks, but can't do that any longer without payment. Let me be clear, we are a fee.
No, let me be clear. If you need federal money in order to operate your business, then you are a failed business. You are a welfare business. Flat out. You're a welfare business if you need federal funds in order to operate your business.
Fee-for-service industry. When we can't pay our staff, we lose our staff and children lose care. Families do not lose appointments, they lose the people they trust. What happened in Minnesota had nothing to do with the ethical, longstanding autism providers. What did happen was organized criminal networks that exploited autism services by opening fake centers, billing for children that did not exist, billing for services never delivered, and stealing millions of taxpayer dollars in the process.
Well,
These
too
are
bad.
not minor compliance issues. They are criminal enterprises. Families trusted that the government was protecting the integrity of the system. It failed. Now, instead of doing the obvious thing and targeting criminal actors, the response has been to freeze everyone's payments. That decision does not punish the criminals. It punishes innocent children and families. As Medicaid payments are delayed due to prepayment review by an insurance company that is in the business of denying claims, providers are reducing hours, cutting staff, and starting to close. Families are scrambling for alternatives that don't exist. Children are regressing. Parents are leaving jobs to care for their disabled children.
Then you know what you need to do? Those of you who are legitimate businesses, you need to be out there and be anti-fraud protesters. But that's not what you're doing, are you? You're sitting on your ass. We don't see anybody out there anti-ICE, anti-fraud protesting. And when the one guy did go out there, he was attacked. And he would have been justified if he'd have pulled out a Glock and cleaned house. All you guys do is sit on your ass. And come here, and now here you are in Congress, bitching, moaning, whining, crying about the money you didn't receive. But you're not doing anything locally to protect the money that you're no longer receiving. I mean, you're as big of a coward as that fake Black Panther dude is, pretending like he gonna shoot somebody. You're no different, except of your political affiliation. You're no different. You're just as big of a coward as he is.
Autism therapy cannot be paused without consequences. Loss of services can erase years of progress in weeks, and abrupt disruption of services can cause lifelong consequences in these children. This is not abstract harm. It is daily trauma for families already carrying an extraordinary burden. The simple solution to the problem: send the criminals to jail and allow trusted providers with decades of clean audits, verified ownership structures to continue providing prescribed ethical therapy.
Well, that's why now all federal funds will be handled by the federal government. You have to submit your paperwork to the federal government. But until this is cleared up with Minnesota, until they throw the freaking bracelets and send Walz, Ilhan, Fry, and the state attorney general and other members in the Minnesota government to the Gray Bar Motel, you just suffered. You have to suffer. But you know, this is what you get for acquiescing to illegals who claim racism because you spoke out against the fraud. Hey, can't make an egg without breaking a few omelets.
And go back to paying them what we've earned and resume paying them on time. I built Holland for 20 years. Families built their lives.
Yeah, that was under the Biden administration.
Around the care that we provide. All of that is
here's the fake white tears, y'all.
Not by fraud, but by clumsy government response that failed to distinguish between criminals and caregivers.
On the fake white tears,
It treats
y'all.
children with
The
disabilities.
gentlelady will suspend. We've got a photographer there.
One thing I'll just get a
Allow
little emotional
photographers
about
in.
is it does, as a woman, feel pretty. I feel like the humanity of women and their rights.
But yeah, I mean, the white woman fake crying thing, I could do it too, but and then you just turn it off.
No one cares. And even in the face of Trump and everything that he represented, that's a tough pill to swallow.
When it
I built Holland for 20 years. Families built their lives. Around the care that we provide. All of that is risk of destruction today. Not by fraud, but by clumsy government response that failed to distinguish between criminals and caregivers. It treats children with
The
disabilities.
gentlelady will suspend. We've got a photographer there. We allow photographers in here, but not between the panel of the witnesses and the members. You will please move.
Okay.
Photographer, please move.
Thank you.
Like right now.
Okay. Sorry.
Well,
All of that is at the risk of destruction. Sorry, can I continue?
Yeah, please continue.
Not by
White
fraud, but the
liberal
clumsy
black
government
women.
response that fails to distinguish between criminals and
white liberal
caregivers.
women.
It treats children with disabilities as acceptable collateral damage. Fraud must be stopped and criminals prosecuted. I'm a taxpayer. I live in Minnesota. This is disgusting. But families and children should never pay the price for government failure. Thank you.
We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Besides the work Mr. Shirley has done, I want to recognize Powerline, who has done yeoman's work exposing this over the last decade, what has happened. And I just want to say, Ms. Larson, I live in northern Wisconsin. There's an autism school that was started in my community. Where did we visit when we wanted to start that a decade ago? We came to Minnesota, where you have been leaders in having good autism programs. And I think about the tremendous fraud that has gone on in nutrition programs, housing programs, but is there anything more heinous than abusing an autism program?
I can't imagine. It's so hard to believe that people are faking the children have autism and stealing money from the government. When I'm sitting here with my 25-year-old non-speaker, and now children like my son aren't going to have services because they stole money from the government and faked these things. And it's just, it is, like I said, disgusting.
With what's going on right now, what are the families that you're serving? What are they saying?
They're scared.
What are they doing?
Everybody's scared. There are centers that are programs that have already shut down. Staff are leaving. I, this week, asked my staff who will take unpaid leave because we can't keep going like this. I'm like I said, I'm 400,000 plus in debt now, and I'm not sure these are going to get paid back. I went to a bank and they wouldn't back the receivable because they said that's not a receivable. If it's prepayment review, you may not get it.
And Ms. Larson, none of this would have happened if the fraud did not occur. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Mr. Dexter, could have something been done about this earlier?
Yes. As I stated in my opening testimony, in the years that I worked there, we identified how fraud was occurring, the loopholes that existed, And
What were some of the warning signs, Mr. Dexter?
Well, the fact that part of our job was to go and collect attendance records. We would find attendance records that were either incomplete, non-existent. Obviously, there were times we found them to be fabricated because they were given to us way later. And the same with billing records. They were allowed 30 days after the end of the billing period to submit billing records. So they were not immediately available to us. And it kind of allowed overpayments or double payments to be overlooked. So we had the attendance record issue. We had the fact that there was no way to verify who was signing the children in and out. No way to verify what times those children were signed in and out.
Could I do a follow-up here? In Wisconsin, we learned this month that Ibrahima Diop, a Minneapolis school finance boss, placed on leave for failing to submit required financial paperwork with the Minneapolis School District and for signing questionable contracts linked to the Somali fraud scandal, was hired by the Milwaukee Public School System as a deputy superintendent at a salary of $240,000 a year. Do you think it wise? Might that be a warning sign that this person was involved, may have been involved with fraud in Minneapolis? Shouldn't they be concerned in Wisconsin that this is that they're hiring someone like that?
Well, if somebody that they hire has a past history and practice of doing that type of stuff, I would be very leery of it occurring again or that being the basis that they're hired.
So, Governor,
I'll say it again, and I've said it several times. With these NGOs and whatnot, this isn't set in stone, but $5 million will be allocated to an NGO. 4.5 million will walk out the back door back into the politician's pocket. The $500,000 that's left, $250,000 will go, and you heard it, this dude's annual salary is $250K. $250,000 will go to the head of the NGO, and the rest of the money, the other $250,000, will be allocated towards rent, staff, light, gas, telephone, etc. And there's very little left for those who actually truly need the services and got to get put on a waiting list and got to wait forever. You know how it is. Y'all heard about it. How people who are desperate actually need the help. They go into these NGOs. They get put on a waiting list. They got to wait months. By the time the NGO actually gets to them, it's too late. They got evicted. The child has been, commandeered by the state, etc.
Governor Evers refused to open the books and is blocking federal audits of our food stamp and Medicaid programs. And he also vetoed 4 auditor positions in a recent budget. Do you think that is also a warning sign?
Yes, if it's preventing
or ill-advised, would that be a better way to pose the question?
Yeah, if it prevents the oversight and the ability to audit and look at the records to make sure can have a check and balance system, I think that'd be very unwise because again, that allows fraud to occur.
Because Mr. Shirley, what is happening in Minnesota, it could be happening throughout the United States. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
If there's one thing we've learned or leered, as they say in Minneapolis, isn't it possible that this is happening everywhere?
Yes, I believe it is.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize the ranking member of the whole committee, Mr. Raskin, for his 5 minutes of question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank all the witnesses for your excellent testimony. Mr. Hedler-Gaudet, the administration has systematically undermined government oversight. The president has fired more than a dozen inspectors general, not for any cause, but seemingly just in retaliation for doing their jobs and to block unwanted investigations. President Trump has defunded.
Well, now you know why. I mean, you understand. I'm not saying any of this with malice. When you guys look, when I do these videos and I'm very harsh or whatnot, understand it's not because of malice. It's because of frustration. Because we know, I mean, you clearly hear the BS coming out of these people's mouths. And it's like you're what is that guy from Thor Ragnarok, the Grand Inquisitor or whatnot? I'm in the mood for a public execution. I completely understand what he means by that. There's no way in hell you and your wife should be waiting damn near a year to get your son checked out. Your son should have been checked out within 30 days of you guys registering. But now you see why you've been waiting damn near a year. The money's gone. The money's being siphoned out. And if suddenly now there's enough money in the coffers and your son, and keep in mind, I'm not slamming you, bro. You should know. Y'all know me by now. I love my people, but I hate when I hate that we love the Confederacy, the criminals. Your son should have been checked out within 30 days. Should have seen the doctor. Yeah, okay, yeah. You know, he's got these situations. Go ahead, cut the check. As much as people crap on the VA, when they came and evaluated my father, and they was like, oh, yeah, he's been like this for a minute. We gonna check his medical records. Oh, he been like this for a while. How long has he been living with you? Okay, you know what? We gonna go ahead and cut you a check for as long as he's been living. Y'all been here since what? August of 2019? Oh yeah, we gonna cut you a check from the point that he lived with you up until the point that you contacted us in 2021. And now we gonna send you a check on a monthly basis based on this. And every other month, every 6 months, we gonna do an evaluation. And the worse he get, the bigger your check gonna be. You know, for those of y'all who think I'm living off my father's money. Meanwhile, our son struggles in school and the illegals get all the money and help. Yeah, now you know why. Now you know why. You're getting it. You're getting it. But you got other black people who do these channels who root for the illegals. They root for the illegals. They root for criminality. They don't give a damn about black people. Other channels, they don't cover this stuff. You know why? Because they're scumbags. If anything, they take the liberal slant on this situation. Because they're scumbags. They don't give a damn about you and your wife and your child. They only care about the liberal narrative. Do you understand now? And I understand. I don't do this channel for money. When I had the Embrace Villainy channel and people was trying to send me super chats, I said, yo, man, don't send me no super chats. Keep your money. You need your money. I don't give a good goddamn if you sitting on $240 million. Don't send me a dime. The game is not, for me, the game is not to be sold. The game is to be told. What you do with the information is up to you. I don't need your money. I'm sitting pretty. I'm good. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to give you the information. I'm trying to give you the game without a hook. You understand? Without a hook. I'm trying to work for you because I give a fuck about you, my black brother. I care about you.
These niggas don't give a fuck about you. They do all this. Females ain't shit. Black women ain't shit. They do that content for money. I don't do this shit for money. I don't give a fuck about your dog. Keep your money. You need it. Invest it. Take care of yourself. Buy your goddamn home protection. Buy a generator. Get you some canned goods, whatever. Look out for you. I do this for you, not for me. You say it's crazy that black men's space is simply everything, aka red pilling these sheep, and they look at us like the enemy. Bruh, y'all are not my enemy. The only time you my enemy is if you're trying to cause controversy because you don't like what I'm saying, because you know you a simp ass nigga that you know you're effeminately raised. You're effeminately raised. I'm trying to help you out. I deal with the politics. Look, I don't give a fuck about the opinion pieces. If y'all are paid, okay, y'all are paid attention to my channel. The whole reason why y'all are here is because y'all know I'm sitting up here. We going through the boring shit, the interviews of what these people are actually saying, what they're actually saying, not the sound bites and the clips that are being portrayed in the media, especially by left-wing propagandists or right-wing extremists. We actually going through the real shit. What did they say? And now here we are. We look, make up your own goddamn decisions, your own mind. The only way you're gonna truly be free is through knowledge. Knowledge equals freedom. Not with some motherfucker. Keep in mind, what was the movie with 12 Years a Slave? Okay, 12 Years a Slave, the new one. I'm sorry, not 12 Years a Slave. What was that fucking movie? The Nat Turner movie. The old boy made. I forget the name of it, and I saw it too. I need to actually buy the DVD. But if you know this, remember the white bitch told him, the white slave master told him, no, you only read from these books. Do you understand? She gave him the Bible with a slave-minded interpretation. The Nat Turner movie. The Nat Turner movie. Remember the Nat Turner movie that old dude made? That he had to get funding for? The white bitch told him, you only read the Bible, you don't learn from these books. And Nat Turner realized that, hell, the scriptures aren't matching the physicality of what I'm seeing. Hence the Nat Turner revolution. You're not making any sense. What you got me telling people, you got me telling black people to turn the other cheek while I'm watching people getting their teeth knocked out. To be force-fed because they're protesting the inhumane treatment that they're suffering. Birth of a Nation. Thank you. Black people were crying in November about not getting food stamps. Why didn't the Somalis give out turkeys that they could have easily bought with the bags of cash they were flying to Africa? Because they don't give a fuck about you. And I've said for years, even when I was working, I'm working 2 jobs. I would get 2 turkeys, one from one job, one from the other. I would give both of those turkeys away to a homeless shelter in downtown Columbus and go out and buy my own fucking turkey. Here, feed the homeless. Majority black. Feed the homeless with these turkeys. I go out and buy my own fucking turkey because I can fucking afford it. I did that for years. I worked at the fucking women's crisis center. These raggedy bitches would sit up there, somebody blow the horn outside the fucking shelter. These bitches with babies in arms would run to the windows to see if it was their baby daddy blowing the fucking horn to come pick them up. Just do understand, you could leave voluntarily. Do you not understand? You said they snubbed Birth of a Nation, but heavily promoted the Harriet Tubman movement. Yeah, which nobody went to go see. That garbage bullshit. More black men went to go see Birth of a Nation than they did Harriet Tubman. Nat Turner realized that the Confederacy, the Dixiecrats, that you now call it the Democrats, the liberals, were blatantly lying to you in order to push their narrative to keep you in slavery. Instead of physical change today, they now have you in economic and psychological change today. That's why you get a fake ass Al B. Shore blood gang member talking about he gonna shoot ICE agents claiming to be a Black Panther. Man, if you don't get your fucking faggot ass criminal blood gang member, fake ass George Soros paid ass the fuck out of our face, we should fucking deal with you on GP. Good Lord, you are so fucking lucky that us as black people, you are lucky that murder, justifiable murder, is a federal crime that will send us to prison for 25 to life. Because a motherfucker like you should be fucking dealt with by the black community on sight. You a bitch. You a fraud and you a bitch. You're clearly an agent and you should be fucking dealt with. The fuck out of here, you bitch ass nigga. Ain't no black person worth their salt sitting up here fighting for illegals who are pedophiles, rapists, drug and human sex traffickers, scammers, and murderers. None of us are for that shit. You should be dealt with for that shit. But we can't do it because it's illegal. Good Lord. You're lucky when we are amalgamated society. Because personally, you should be beaten to fucking death with brass knuckles for that bullshit that you tried. You tried to get black people to sacrifice their bodies for motherfuckers that are pieces of shit criminals. You are a piece of shit criminal. You should be fucking, oh my. Ooh.
Oh dear, I seem to have spotted a cunt. Good day.
Black men have always been the ones dealing with slavery. They didn't bring black women in till the end of the slave trade because of the slave trade blockades. America circumvented it by creating homegrown slaves. Right. And the fucked up part about it is that, you know, white Americans ended slavery. White Americans put their lives on the line to end slavery. Meanwhile, Omar Gaddafi gets murdered by the Obama administration. And the second Omar Gaddafi dies, Islamists immediately rush into Libya and start enslaving the black Libyans. Islamists did that. But you a Muslim. Suck my dick.
The Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency. He's removed independent leadership at the Office of Special Counsel and Office of Government Ethics, blockading whistleblowers and numerous investigations. What is your assessment, Mr. Hetler-Gaudet, of the Trump administration's apparent systematic opposition to internal oversight mechanisms in the federal government?
Thank you, Ranking Member Raskin. My assessment is that the last year or so has been one of the most anti-oversight, anti-accountability periods that I've witnessed in our federal government. And I think the things you laid out, as well as others, are the sort of proof in the pudding there. And I think, speaking of things that should be giving us pause and raising red flags, that should all be giving us serious pause and raising serious red flags about how seriously people who claim to take oversight, accountability, fraud, how seriously do they actually take it?
There's been a lot of attention given to Donald Trump's extraordinary use of the party.
And understand something right now. Y'all know where I stand on Pam fucking ineffectual, feckless piece of shit Bondi. All this bitch do is get up on Fox News and finger wag all fucking day long about who's under investigation and all this shit. Bitch, where's the arrest? Bitch, where's the handcuffs? Bitch, stop talking shit and arrest some motherfucking body. Y'all see the memes I post? Bitch, arrest some fucking body. Stop talking shit. Arrest some motherfucking body. It should take Don Lemon right now. Come tomorrow morning. Don Lemon should be in fucking handcuffs. Him and the rest of them raggedy black bitches and them white fucking cucks that invaded their church. Them motherfuckers should be under arrest tomorrow morning. How much fucking information and investigation do you need to arrest these motherfuckers? Huh? How much more do you need? They're on tape. Don Lemon got all the evidence against himself and them all over X. How much more do you need evidence to arrest the motherfucker? You piece of shit, bitch. I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of this. You're under investigation, and you're under investigation, and you're under investigation. Bitch, shut the fuck up with who's under investigation and throw some goddamn cuffs on a motherfucker. What the fuck? Elon already exposed all the corruption when he did the whole Doge shit. He sat up there in the Oval Office next to Trump. It was like, you'll be surprised at how many members of Congress with their damn near $200,000 salary have tens of millions of dollars in their bank account. That's been almost a fucking year. What the fuck are you waiting on, bitch? And this is exactly why I'm looking to get the fuck up out of here. Because these people are playing. I need y'all to understand. Democrats, Republicans playing games with us. Playing games with us. They're playing games with us. Oh yeah, I'll listen to Donald Trump about stock options and all of that shit. But as far as like criminal prosecutions and shit, nigga, you playing with us. You playing with us, Donald John Quavius Trump. You playing with us. You ain't looking to arrest no motherfucking body. You ain't looking to press no charges on no motherfucking body. You a bitch ass nigga, just like fucking Joe Biden. You a bitch ass nigga. Press some charges on somebody, and then we can talk. Outside of that, I don't want to hear no fucking shit. I don't want to see this raggedy fucking alcoholic white blonde bitch sitting on Fox talking about finger wagging to myself. Investigation. I don't give a fuck. For those of y'all who really don't seem to understand where I stand, I don't want to hear that shit. You'll come after a capo, but you won't go after the fucking dons. Which will be Tim Walz is a don. Ilhan Omar is a don. The Minnesota State Attorney General is a don. Don Lemon is a don. Until I see them motherfuckers in handcuffs getting perp walked, you a raggedy lying ass bitch. You're two sides of the same fucking coin. And for those of y'all who don't seem to understand, Yes, I'm in favor of the deportations. Yes, I'm in favor of the terrorists. But I am not in favor of what the fuck they're doing with the DOJ. Because it's bitch made bullshit. Janine Pirro should have been the fucking head of the DOJ. You see, she cleaned up DC real quick. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi, all the fuck she do is sit up here and talk shit on fucking Hannity, Fox and Friends, but she don't do shit. Feckless, ineffectual, useless fucking leadership. Let's continue.
Pardon power, as in the pardon of violent insurrectionists and cop beaters. But there's also been a forgiveness of $1.5 billion in restitutionary fines that various people had to pay. And a lot of them are fraudsters. The DOJ in Trump's first term brought bank fraud and tax evasion charges against reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley. They were convicted in 2022. They owed more than $22 million in restitution to taxpayers and to their victims. But then Trump suddenly, inexplicably pardoned them and forgave all of the money that they were supposed to be paying back to their victims. Todd Chrisley bragged publicly about his get out of jail free card, jubilantly exclaiming, "The feds got effed." Let me give you one other example. Trump on April 23rd issued a pardon for Paul Walchuk, a former nursing home exec who pleaded guilty to multiple tax crimes. What he was doing was taking millions of dollars from the nurses and orderlies and doctors who worked for him at his facilities. He took more than $10 million that way. Instead of giving it to the IRS for their taxes, he used the money to buy a $2 million yacht and to pay for high-end jet travel and to go shopping at Bergdorf Goodman and Cartier. Well, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for stealing his employees' tax withholdings, and he was ordered to pay his employees back $4.4 million for the money he looted from their accounts. So he's going to have to pay that back. But then he got his mom to go to a glitzy fundraising dinner for Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and she paid $1 million for her ticket. Then, right after Trump was inaugurated in his second term, Walchuk petitioned for a presidential pardon, arguing that he was the victim of political retaliation because they were Trump supporters. And what do you know? President Trump issued a complete pardon with forgiveness of all of the financial fines and restitution that Mr. Walchuk was going to have to pay back to his workers, the nurses.
So that means ignore the Minnesota fraud? Because I understand what's going on. Okay. Let me seriously break down this Minnesota fraud. Let me break it down for y'all so you truly understand what's going on. Because Minnesota is not the only state where this is happening. These sanctuary cities rely on federal tax dollars for these NGOs and Somalians and other criminal illegals. This is why they're trying to that's why they're trying to stop ICE. Because what happened is, again, with the NGOs, it's the same thing with the Somalian and Nigerian daycare centers, healthcare centers, etc. Is that they take in millions of dollars and they funnel that shit through the Democratic Party. We'll let you leave airports with suitcases of cash, but we need our money up front. This is why I've said months ago that the Democratic Party is a criminal organization built on money laundering. Built on money laundering. This is why you get a goofy nigga like this fucking prune ass piece of shit who sit up here and play the whataboutism game. Because they're stealing our money. Our money. If you work a job, you pay taxes, bro, they stealing your fucking money. I don't give a fuck. I want every 1 red cent of my money accounted for. When you go to the grocery store, you be checking prices, right? Because you want to make sure you get the best deal for your money. Imagine they taking 40% of your money out of your check for taxes. And 36% of that, let's say they take $300 a month, $300 per check out of your money. They take $300 of every 2 weeks, $600 a month out of your paycheck. And out of that $600, $500 goes into this motherfucker's pocket, which he uses to buy yachts and mansions and luxury suits and shit. And then sit up here in Congress and have the fucking balls to say, well, what about this? What about that? Meanwhile, he vacationing on the French Riviera with your $590. You got motherfuckers in favor of that. But, and I get it. The average black person, especially those of y'all that listen to my videos, y'all work a fucking 9-to-5 jobber. Y'all are a 9-to-5er. Or even if you don't listen to my videos, let's say you listen to other people's videos that talk about this shit or whatnot. Understand, you a 9-to-5er. You getting that goddamn FICA goddamn tax. They taking 40% of your fucking state income tax you can get. But that federal income tax, that's what really be eating your fucking check up. And just think, you paying for Somalians to send fucking suitcases of your money. $300, $600 of your money is going overseas to fund terrorism. Or better yet, $300 a month is going overseas to fund terrorism. The other $300 is going into a motherfuckers like this pockets. So he can sit up here and try to shame, guilt. What is it? Shame, insult, guilt, and the need to be right. Ain't that what Kevin Samuels, y'all goddamn internet granddaddy, told y'all? Sign language that these trifling back bitches be trying to fill y'all heads with. Yeah, this motherfucker is the top level. He's the top sign language motherfucker. Do you not understand that? Y'all crying for hours on end about a raggedy black bitch, but your real motherfucking oppressor, the real motherfucker stealing your money is a motherfucker like this. But you worried about why your dick can't get wet. Meanwhile, this motherfucker is fucking you with no spit, no Vaseline, just sweat and friction every 2 weeks. But you crying about a black bitch as if, she's your main problem. Motherfuckers like him are your main problem. Ooh.
Now, gentlemen, Mr. Butler's been up north, I hear. Don't you agree with this, Mr. Butler?
I think it's hard winning a war with words, gentlemen.
What do you mean, sir?
I mean, Mr. Hamilton, there's not a cannon factory in the whole South.
What difference does that make, sir, to a gentleman?
I'm afraid it's going to make a great deal of difference to a great many gentlemen, sir.
Are you hinting, Mr. Butler, that the Yankees can lick us?
No, I'm not hinting. I'm saying very plainly that the Yankees are better equipped than we. They've got factories, shipyards, coal mines, and a fleet to bottle up our harbors and starve us to death. All we've got is cotton and slaves and arrogance.
That's treachery!
A problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump.
And you ain't black.
Right. Hi. Thanks for the fun.
Get the fuck out!